Thank you. Good evening. Tonight's Committee of Adjustment hearing is being held by video conference and live streaming video on the town's live stream website at oakville.ca. This is a hearing to consider applications for minor variance and consents held under the authority of the Planning Act. Please keep in mind the intent of this process is to review the application that is before the committee, listen to the evidence, and then make a decision. This process is not intended to be used to resolve any concerns or disputes that may exist between the town, individuals, or organizations. If a request for a deferral is made and the committee grants such a request, the applicant or authorized agent must contact the Secretary-Treasurer to schedule a new hearing date. In order to conduct an effective and efficient electronic hearing, we have adopted the following process. If you are watching the live stream of this hearing on oakville.ca, and if you wish to speak to an item on the agenda, you can call 905-815-6095. Again, 905-815-6095. Phone number is also posted on your screen below the live stream at oakville.ca. Staff will be standing by to take your call. When you call in, staff will ask your name, item number you wish to address, and your telephone number. Further instructions will be provided for you to call back to join the video conference. When the chair of the committee polls for interested parties, press *6 to unmute yourself. The applicant or agent will be given the opportunity to briefly explain to the committee the basis of the application and answer any questions that may arise. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for a presentation. You will need to state your full name and address for the record. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. All delegations must also state their full name and address for the record. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided to make your presentation. All remarks and questions are to be directed to the chair. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. The applicant or agent will then be provided with a further 5 minutes to respond to the comments made by the interested parties and answer any questions from the committee members. If the applicant or agent has any concerns found in the staff report, particularly with any proposed conditions, this is your opportunity to advise us. The matter will then be taken into committee for a decision. This will mark the end of all discussion. Any person desiring a notice of decision of an application must provide a written request, preferably through email, to the Secretary-Treasurer. Written notice of the committee's decision will be mailed not later than 10 days for minor variances and 15 days for consent to the applicant and/or agent and any other person who filed a written request for such notice. The last day to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal will be noted on the decision. Only the applicant, specified persons, or public bodies may appeal the committee's decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. In November 22, Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act amended the Planning Act to remove appeal rights for members of the public. If no appeal is received within the prescribed timeframe, the decision of the committee becomes final and binding. Secretary-Treasurer will then notify the applicant and anyone who received a copy of the decision through written correspondence. People participating in this hearing are to be courteous to and respectful of the members of the committee, town staff, and other people participating in this electronic hearing. Tonight's electronic hearing is being video recorded and available for future viewing at oakville.ca. Thank you. Welcome to the streamlined version of the Committee of Adjustment tonight. I see we have regrets from Ms. McHale and Mr. Hardcastle. Committee members, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? I see none. Madam Secretary-Treasurer, are there any requests for deferral or withdrawal?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I will let Mr. Hicks in. One moment.
Good evening, Mr. Hicks.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm here representing application A011-2025 for 181 Front Street. We received last minute a number of different objection letters from the residents, some of which are in the area. So we've decided that since there were some technical questions that were answered, that even though planning supports the application and their thing, that I would rather, for the committee's sake, be able to give you the proper information to be able to answer some of those concerns that the residents have had. So we will need a little time to deal with that, and then I'll present those to the residents to see if that satisfies them. But I don't think they'll all be satisfied, but we do want to answer those questions because there's some grading issues and some suggestions that the drawings were inaccurate. So I want a chance to double check that and to make sure that we've got the right information in front of the committee. So that's the reason for the deferral. But we have a number of members that were supporting it as well. But I think this is more important for the committee's sake that I be able to present the true facts of the situation to you. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. We always appreciate when an effort is made to try to resolve matters beforehand, so that's much appreciated. Committee members, all those in favor of the deferral? That is unanimous. You'll contact the Secretary Treasurer when you're ready to come back.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot to turn my camera on.
That's okay. Rookie mistake.
Take care. So, yeah. Bye.
Madam Chair, are there any other requests for deferral?
Yes, Mr. Chair, looks like one more. I'll move them in one moment.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Sandra Gava. I'm representing the file A008-2025 at 190 Tilford Road. We would like to request a deferral to work with town staff to provide some additional requested information.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, all those in favor of the deferral? Okay, that is unanimous. Your application is deferred. Contact the Secretary Treasurer for a new date.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Secretary Treasurer, any more requests for deferral?
No, Mr. Chair, that is all.
Okay, thank you. We have no consent applications tonight, so we'll move to CAV A006-2025 at 469 Seton Drive. Good evening, Mr. Kieran.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
I guess it's only fitting that you're starting tonight what seems to be somewhat of the George Kieran show.
Yeah, somehow we ended up with about four applications on tonight. So I was hoping to get a little break after this one, but the next one was deferred, so I'm back to back, unfortunately. My name is Joris Kieran. I'm the agent for this application, and I'll go through a brief presentation, and then I'm happy to answer any questions afterwards. This is a fairly straightforward application. There are 3 variances being sought. The first 2 are very minor and almost technical in nature, and then the third one is really the main variance. That's the increase for residential floor area. I'd like to note that planning staff does support the variances, so they have expressed that in their report that the members should have as well. This is a single-family dwelling. The first variance, we can flip to the second slide, please. Variance 1 has to do with the window well in the backyard. As you know, recently the zoning bylaw was updated to restrict window well sizes, but that's mainly to make sure that side yards aren't adversely affected and swales restricted or access restricted. So this is a rear yard facing window well, so we don't have any of those issues. The variance number 2 is just the garage. It's a pretty small increase, 45 square meters allowed, 46 is being sought. Really just to give a little bit of extra storage space in the back of the garage. So it doesn't enlarge the garage, you know, on the front of the building. And then variance 3 is really the more substantial variance. So that's where an increase of residential floor area is asking for 43.5% when 39% is permitted. And if we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, that's the second floor. Maybe did we mix those up? Maybe I sent them in the wrong order. Is the next slide the first floor by chance? No. Okay. I guess we maybe missed the slide. If we can go back, please, Jen, to slide 3. Oh, sorry, that my mistake. So slide 2 is the main floor. We'll just stay on slide 2 for a minute, please. So oftentimes when we're asking for an increase in RFA, we sometimes identify the specific areas that are the main contributing factor to the overage. But in this case, I didn't do that because the reason more space is needed, because this is a rather large family. It's a 6-member family, one of who is elderly. That's why the elevator is needed. And really, the room sizes here are fairly moderate. There's just a few more rooms to provide for the needs of the family. So it's really just a combination of rooms and spaces to, you know, accommodate the large family that is going to live here. If we can go to slide 3, please. Same thing upstairs. So it's 4 bedrooms. So it's not a 5 or 6 bedroom home. That's not ballooning up the square footage. They're reasonable sized bedrooms with en suites and just a primary bedroom as well. So I'm not identifying any specific areas, just sort of an overall description of what the family needs, and this is what it looks like. Go to slide 4, please. So this is the front elevation in a rendered form. As you can see, we did, as we normally do, try to hide the extra square footage inside the roof line, and with articulation on the front of the building with a 1-story porch. So that all sort of tones everything down and kind of hides that little bit of extra square footage. Next slide, please. So this is just sort of a more technical description of what we've done to reduce the massing. So those 2 peaks at the front, we actually have them lowered down. So there would be some sloping inside those bedrooms, and that's to bring that roof line down and to reduce the massing. And then that whole front porch there is all at the sort of at the 1-story level. Next slide, please. This is the side elevation. Nothing highlighted here, but just you can see that there's a lot of articulation happening there, a lot of different materials being used and in different areas. So that makes for an interesting elevation. It's not just a plain wall. Next slide, please. So rear elevation here, we do have a slightly higher ceiling in the great room, but it's not, I just wanted to know that it's not a 2-story great room. It's a 1.5 stories, again, to help bring down that massing and not make it look, too imposing on the rear. And next slide. And this is the other side elevation. So again, we have lots of different wall planes, lots of different roof planes to add interest and break up the massing. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Kieran. Just a reminder, if anyone wishes to speak to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant? I see none. Madam Secretary, has anyone called in to speak to this application?
No, Mr. Chair, no calls and no one with their hand up.
Thank you. In that case, we'll close discussion and I'll look for a motion on this matter. Ms. Price.
Based on the inspection of the subject property and the recommendations by the town, I believe the three variances to be minor in nature. The general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw has been maintained. The general intent and purpose of the official plan has been maintained, and the variance is desirable for the appropriate use of land, building, or structure, and is appropriate for the neighborhood. The applicant can proceed with their development subject to the following conditions: that the dwelling be constructed in a general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated November 11th, 2024, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Thank you, Ms. Price. And I'll just note for the record that there was no objection from the neighborhood on this matter. Is there any discussion on that motion? See none. All those in favor of the motion to approve? Okay, your motion is approved unanimously.
Thank you.
Moving on to CAV 009 2025 163 Douglas Avenue. Welcome back, Mr. Kieran.
Thank you. Okay, so this one is a fairly straightforward application with only one variance being requested, which is for increase in lot coverage. I've just highlighted, it's not really a zoning related matter, but there's a very large mature tree in the backyard, and I just wanted to mention that the house was designed around that tree, and we moved the rear porch over to ensure that that tree would be able to be preserved. You can see we have positioned the house in line with the house to the northwest. Unfortunately, the house on the other side, on the southeast, it's an much older building. I think it's over 100 years old, and it's unusually placed, so it wasn't really didn't make sense to try and line it up with that one, because it's just out of line with all the other houses on the street. So and we are providing general setbacks here on the side, so it's just the increased lot coverage that we're seeking here. Next slide, please. So this is, I'm sure the committee members are aware, this is the area near downtown Oakville, which has the SP10 special provision, which lowers that lot coverage from what would typically be about 35% to a 19%. And although that increase, which we're seeking to 27% is may seem high, I just, for context, highlighted the properties, some of the properties, there's more on Douglas that actually have similar or sometimes even greater lot coverages and have been approved through the committee. So it's not uncommon in this area to have the increased lot coverage, especially for newer development. So we're not unusual in that regard. Next slide, please. So similar to my last presentation, this house is modest in size, and the increase in lot coverage is not because we want to build an extravagant home. This is a 4-bedroom home. You can see all the rooms are very moderately sized. The 2-car garage is barely a 2-car garage. It's kind of on the small side. It's a smaller office, and then a dining room, a kitchen, and a great room. So nothing really extravagant or oversized. The house is around 3,000 square feet, so it's not large by any means, and certainly fits in with the scale and size that is prevalent in the area. Next slide, please. So here are some features. Again, we've done the same thing to even though the house isn't a huge square footage, just to bring that roof line down and provide lots of interest with a diverse material palette, and then stepping the wall planes so that it breaks it up, and also including a 1-story front porch. Next slide, please. So side elevation, again, we have stepping wall planes, stepping roof lines, and, adding to just the interest of that side elevation. And then next slide. Similar to that previous application, we have a higher ceiling great room, but it's only a 1.5 story. This one has a cathedral ceiling, so it has this kind of ceiling and is not 2 stories. So again, to keep that massing, a little bit under control. And last slide. So this is the other elevation, which I quite like this elevation. It could almost be a front elevation because it has a lot of interest and a nice gable, as well as some other attractive features. So this will be partially visible from the street because it's one in from the corner of this property. So that'll, I think, be a nice addition to the streetscape. And the last thing I'll mention is that planning is in support, or more accurately now they say no objections. They have no objections to the variance. So planning staff did mention that in their report. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Kieran. Committee members, any questions for the applicant? I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called in to speak to this application?
Mr. Chair, there have been no calls.
Okay, thank you. And we'll close discussion and look for a motion on this matter. Mr. Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Based on my review of the owner's application, the site plans, the building elevations, my site visit, together with the presentation by the owner's consultant and the planning staff's report, I am satisfied that the variance is minor in nature and should be approved subject to the condition that the dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated November 15th, 2024, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if the building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Thank you, Mr. Dickey. Any discussion on the motion? I see none. Again, worth mentioning, no opposition was voiced against this application. All those in favor of the motion to approve? Okay, that is unanimous. Your application is approved.
Thank you.
Okay, A10/2025 at 530 Carson Lane. We'll give you a break after this one, Mr. Kieran.
Yes, thank you.
Again, just anyone wishing to speak to this application, you can call in at 905-815-6095. Please proceed.
Okay, members of the committee, this application is a little bit unique. We have three variances being sought. One of them is again more of a technical variance, which is associated with the rear window well. Similar to the other application, it's not conflicting with any swales or access, so it's not causing any issues, and that's why we're asking for that slight increase. Before I move on, I should mention that there are 3 letters of support that were filed from the immediate neighbors. 2 of them were submitted by me, and I think the 3rd one came in a little bit late in the process, so I'm not sure if that was received, but there are in fact three letters of support. Planning staff has no objections to the variances, and we had a pre-consultation meeting with staff months ago to review this application, and we worked with them to bring it to this point. The The variance one I just talked about for the rear window well. Before I get into the other variances, I just briefly want to mention the site itself. So we are providing generous side yard setbacks in this case, slightly more than what's required. And also the front part of the building is actually going to not have a full foundation and be on piers. And that is really to facilitate the preservation of a large municipal tree that's at the front. So you can see a little dark hatched in area at the front of the footprint. That's what that's for. It doesn't really have anything to do with zoning or the variances, but it's just an accommodation that we're making for that large tree, given the context of the neighborhood. If you can go to the next slide, please. So this is the front of the proposed dwelling. You can see that it's really reading almost like a story and a half dwelling with lower roof lines, very fitting for the area. And the scale is very modest. If we go to the next slide, please. So we just did up a basic streetscape just to demonstrate what that looks like. And you can see in the middle where the proposed dwelling. On the left, we have an existing dwelling that actually my firm designed as well about 5 years ago. That house is about 5,000 square feet. The house we're proposing is under 3,000 square feet. So from a square footage perspective, it's quite modest. And even in building height, you can see that we're actually in line with or below the existing houses there. The variances themselves, variance 2 and variance 3. So the biggest one is the increase in residential floor area from 43% to 51%. And it kind of relates to the lot coverage because it's all stemming from the small size of this lot. This lot is unique in that it's one of, if not the smallest lot in the neighborhood. So to fit even a modest home, it puts the number at well beyond what's permitted. There's similar variances that have occurred around the neighborhood, but this lot is the smallest that I know of, so it's really driving up the percentages a little bit artificially. Next slide, please. So this is the side elevation. Again, we've applied our sort of design similar to the other proposals where we're having different articulations of the wall planes, different roof lines to create interest. Next slide. Same thing here. So different heights happening, different wall planes. Next slide. This is the rear elevation. So the lot does have a bit of a slope off to the east. And then we have this 1.5 story great room facing the rear. So I think that's the last slide, right? Yeah. Oh, no. Right. So the floor plan. So yeah, I include the floor plan because similar to the previous application, this house is not a large house. It's very modest in size. And we don't have any specific area where we can say, hey, look, we needed a bigger room or we needed a 7th bedroom and now we're over this square footage. All these room sizes are reasonable in size, they're modest in size, and the rooms are just the standard rooms that almost any house would have. So this is more just to demonstrate that there's nothing excessive here that would be outside the norm. And we go to the second floor. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we have 3 bedrooms. So again, it's not even a 4-bedroom home. It's very modest, and this adds up to the square footage that we're seeking under this variance, and also a slight increase in the lot coverage. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Your point on the lot size is well taken. Last meeting, we approved a severance around the corner, and I think both the severed lots were larger than the subject lot here.
Yeah.
Committee members, any questions for the applicant? See none. Yes, Mr. Kern, we did receive letters of support from the Nesbitts, Rousseaus, and Switzers.
Okay, good.
Okay. Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anybody called in to speak to this application?
No, Mr. Chair, no calls.
Thank you. We'll move to a motion. Ms. Price.
Based on the site visit of the subject property and the recommendations by the town, I believe the three variances to be minor in nature. The general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw has been maintained. The general intent and purpose of the official plan has been maintained, and the variance is desirable for the appropriate use of land and building and is appropriate for the neighborhood. The applicant can proceed with their development subject to the following conditions. Just a minute, I lost my little thing. The conditions are that the dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevations dated November 15th, 2014, that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Ms. Price, I think the drawing date is November 22nd for this one.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. You're right. It's November. What date did you have? November
22nd, 2024.
Oh,
Maybe am I looking at the wrong one?
this is 160. This is 163 Douglas, right?
No, Carson Lane.
Oh, Carson, that's my fault then. You're right. It's November 22nd, 2024. I apologize.
No problem. Okay, thank you. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor of the motion to approve? That is unanimous. Your application is approved.
Thank you very much.
Move on to PAV A012 2025 at 158 Maple Grove Drive. And anyone wishing to speak to an application, please call in at 905-815-6095. Is it Mr. Guest who's the applicant?
Good evening, Mr. Chair and committee members. It's Paul Guest here from Betts Pools in Stouffville. I'm acting as the agent on behalf of the homeowner. We are seeking a variance on the height of this accessory structure from 4.0 meters to 4.3 meters, as this is how the structure was engineered and designed by the manufacturer. The structure is of timber frame design, so the footprint would need to be drastically reduced to accommodate a 4.0 meter height restriction and maintain visual appeal. We feel this minor increase overall is about 7% increase over the 4.0 meter restriction will suit the property and home size more effectively. Planning staff have no objections to the variance, and we're only asking for the one variance. That's it, unless there's any questions or concerns.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, any questions for the applicant? I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called in on this application?
Mr. Chair, no calls have been received.
Okay, thank you. We'll close discussion and I'll ask for a motion. Mr. Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Based upon my review of the owner's application, site plan, building elevation, my site visit, together with the presentation by the owner's consultant and the planning staff report, I am satisfied that the variances are minor in nature and conform to the for test under the Planning Act. We put forth a motion that the application applied for be approved, subject to the conditions that subject to conditions that the accessory structure be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated November 22nd, 2024, and the elevation drawings dated July 5th, 2024, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date the decision of the building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Thank you, Mr. Dickey. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve? That is unanimous. Your application has been approved, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on to CAV 013 2025 at 1574 Old Lakeshore Road. We do have Mr. Kieran, welcome back, and we do have a letter of objection request to appear tonight. Go ahead, Mr. Kieran.
Yes, thank you. I am going to do sort of a two-part presentation for this application because we received that letter only yesterday, so we weren't able to respond to it. I was planning on submitting my response to the committee members, but there just wasn't enough time to circulate it. So I'm just going to briefly read that response, and then there's a second page which highlights some of the things I'm talking about. So this letter is to address the letter we received from the easterly neighbors about drainage concerns. This issue was raised by staff during the pre-consultation meeting, which was held prior to the minor variance application that we submitted. So in other words, we've been aware of this drainage issue for almost 5 months, and we've been working on it. So it's not news to us. Staff suggested we apply for a minor site plan application through development engineering first, and that's exactly what we did. So we've already been well into the process with development engineering to work out this grading and drainage based on other applications we've done where this has come up. We've sort of preemptively and done that in a different order, exactly for this reason. So a civil engineer was engaged by my client and created a stormwater management plan alongside the site grading plan, which was prepared by an Ontario Land Survey. At this stage, development engineering staff have completed most of their review. I'd say they're about 75% through the review, and I think they're generally satisfied. We've got a couple minor things to work out, but pretty much we're almost there. The proposed plan, and I'm not going to get into too much detail here, but I'm just going to cover sort of at a high level what we're doing to address specifically the concerns raised by the neighbor. The proposed plan directs rear yard water, and that's where most of the water is coming from the rear yard and also other properties. So it comes from other properties, it goes onto the subject, our property, and then it sort of spills in between the houses. So we're taking all that water and we're directing it via a new channel along the northeast side, and proposes a retaining wall on the east side to prevent overflow. So it's more than just a swale that we're doing here. We actually have a little retaining wall there so the water doesn't, really just like, that's why I'm calling it a channel, because it's not, it's meant to prevent that water, which may in some cases be quite a bit of water, from spilling over into the neighbors. So it'll be a pretty good system there, and will be a substantial improvement over what's there now, because there's really not much of any kind of swale there now. So we're really improving that drainage criteria there. In addition to that swale and channel that I just mentioned, a dry well in the front yard will capture stormwater and improve the current condition. So we're actually creating a dry well, which is really a storage tank for stormwater, so we can actually, have that water remain on site. In summary, the neighbors' concerns are being addressed through development engineering, who will only issue permits once their standards are met. And they have fairly stringent standards. So That is the mechanism through which these grading things are dealt with. Therefore, it is unnecessary to delay or defer this application in front of the committee for drainage or grading reasons. If I can go to the next slide, please. Next page, yeah. So again, I don't really want to get into too much detail because I'm not a civil engineer, I'm not a surveyor. We've engaged those folks. They're working directly with development engineering to work out all the details. But just in general, this big red arrow here I've got, that is where that new swale is, that new channel. It's taking all the water from the backyard. It's passing it through onto the front yard, into the ditch that's there, and onto the street. And the box there, that rectangle, that's our soak-away pit. And you can't see it on the drawing, but there's actually a pipe connecting where that swale is to the dry well. So it's going to carry some of that water and dump it into the dry well to further, absorb that flow. The last thing I'll say is, we've dealt with these kind of concerns before at the committee, through the committee. They've been raised to the committee, and my opinion is always that the appropriate venue to deal with the grading and drainage concerns is through development engineering. That's what we're doing, and that's what I'm asking the committee stick with as well. So that's to address the letter. I can move on to the main presentation now, or if there's any questions at this point, we can talk about that. It's up to the chair, Mr. Chairperson.
Let's finish your presentation.
Okay. All right. So if we can put up the second slide now, second package that I submitted. All right. So now we're just going to talk about the actual variances. So this one is a little bit more complex in that we have six different variances being requested. Variance one is fairly straightforward. It's just a slight increase in the width of the front walkway. It's kind of an obscure zoning bylaw, but it limits the width of any front walkway, and we're just asking for a little bit wider, and that's just to go along with the scale of the dwelling. So that one's pretty minor. Variance two is identified on the site plan there. That's the garage area. That's the area of the garage, and there's been a small adjustment there because during the pre-consultation process with staff months ago, zoning had provided some guidance that they wanted. And if we can maybe flip to the second slide. So down here, you'll see the garage. At that time, they had said that they wanted the entirety of that outer box counted as garage area. So it's the internal garage space as well as the canopy that's in front of the garage. So that's why our variance application originally has this larger 84 square meters request for garage area. Then a few days ago, I guess during the final review, there was a different interpretation. Now zoning is saying, no, we will not count the canopy in front. We will only count the internal garage space. So therefore, only 52 square meters is required. And we are therefore asking the committee for that adjustment to be made, should they approve the application, that it's actually 52 square meter garage area, not 84. And that's because of what I just mentioned, a small sort of change of interpretation that came last minute. Planning staff is supportive of the application, with the only exception of the original variance for the garage. They won't support that, but they will support the 52 square meters. So I just wanted to clear that up. We can go back to the first slide now, please. So moving on to variance number, so I'm going to skip the variance 4. Variance 4 is to do with lot coverage. And we have the maximum lot coverage of 25% that's permitted on this property. We are seeking a lot coverage of 28.4%. And I've just highlighted this cabana structure or accessory building because that's really the entirety of the overage is coming from this structure, which is a one-story structure, meets all other zoning requirements. The canopy in the front of the garage that I just mentioned is also counted as lot coverage, and that is further driving up the number. But if you were to remove the cabana, then the house itself pretty much complies with lot coverage. So I just wanted to make that point. Variants 5 and 6 are more technical in nature, because it has to do with the front yard setback, and it may seem that we're asking for a large deviation from what's permitted, but we really position the house just to be in line with more or less the houses on either side, and that just resulted in the front yard being this larger number. And then it's a rarely used bylaw, but there's also a maximum front yard setback, which says the house cannot be any further back than a certain amount. And because of the design of the house itself, that number is also a bit larger in order to capture all the different facade elements. So that's why we have a larger a maximum front yard setback of 29.1 meters. Now, if we go to the next slide, please, there's one variance remaining. It's variance number 3, which I haven't spoken to yet. So that is the garage projection variance. Permitted is 1.5 meters. As the committee members probably are aware, that's a fairly common variance to come up. This is technical in nature, really, because zoning's interpreting this to be taken from the canopy in front of the garage, not the garage itself. If you look at just the garage structure, the enclosed part of the garage, that actually complies. It's only the front canopy that forces that dimension to be what it is, which is much larger than the 1.5 meters. If we go to the next slide, slide 3. So this is a little bit easier maybe to see that canopy that we have in front of the garage. It's just a floating roof element. It's open on 2 sides, almost 3 sides. It has this little slatting detail on the other side. So that is the canopy. That is what's driving that garage projection number. If we go to the next slide, please. So this is just a straight on view of the building. You can see that that second floor steps back quite a bit, and it sort of has some articulation, and that's also how some of the maximum front yard setback is measured. So that's contributing to that that variance. Next slide, please. So this is it's not really relevant to the to this application, but just so the committee can see the entire dwelling. So this is the rear of the dwelling. Next slide, please. And then this is just a shot of the cabana structure that is in the rear yard. And that's, as I mentioned, contributing to that lot coverage overage. Next slide. And that is just the other elevations and the floor plan of the cabana structure. I believe, is there another slide, Jen? No, I don't think so. Oh, that's it. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Kieran. A couple of questions just for clarity. There was a lot packed into that.
Yeah.
So you have formally amended your application to amend variance 2 from garage size from 84 square meters to 52 square meters. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if the committee were to vote in favor of this, a motion would be to approve the application as amended. And secondly, just so everyone's clear on what is and isn't a garage, so the interpretation is that the canopy over the garage is not part of the garage in terms of floor area, but it is part of the garage in terms of projection. Is that correct?
That is the way zoning staff has provided the interpretation, yes.
And you're clearly satisfied with that because you've amended your application.
Yeah, I've asked them to put it in writing. They've provided it in writing. So as long as when we get to building permit, they continue that same interpretation, then I don't have a problem with it.
Okay. And thirdly, you've applied for a minor site plan, but you haven't received approval yet. Is that correct?
No, that's right. The request from the staff at the pre-consultation meeting was that we apply and get at least one round of comments and have those comments not raise any major issues, and then we could proceed to variance. So that's what we've done. But we're a little bit further along now because we're, like I said, about 75% through.
Okay, then in that case, and obviously we'll hear from the neighbor as well, but to give the neighbor certainty that what was described in the presentation actually happens, and I guess I'll ask this question to both staff and you, Mr. Curran. Would it be more appropriate if the plan was approved to amend the first condition that the dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the approved minor site plan to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning and elevations dated November 14th? The condition as written is in accordance with the site plan that's part of the application, which may or may not be the site plan that gets approved.
To the chair, my name is Delia McPhail. I'm a planner with the town. I reviewed this application and consulted with engineering in order to provide comments. So the site plan may not change based on, but the grading plan might. I don't know that there might be any changes to the location of the buildings or the lot coverage. I think as staff are reviewing the application to ensure that stormwater is properly managed on this site, that they will ensure that the applicant's consultant will ensure that they meet the town standard for stormwater management. I can defer to the agent if they have any further comments on that. Whether we reference the site plan in general accordance, there would be an opportunity for planning staff to provide an interpretation of whether or not staff feels if there are some minor adjustments to the building location, etc. So I'm satisfied that it's not necessary, but I'll let the agent speak to that matter since he is involved with the review of the minor site plan application with development engineering.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think I agree with that because there will be no changes to the site plan in terms of setbacks and footprint location. That's not really in discussion. And as I'm pretty confident that we're pretty much almost through the review process. So I would prefer not to add that. I don't have a problem with the standard clause that it's, according to the plans that have been submitted. If there's a note that's added, like this site plan it's not really meant to be a site plan for grading, the one that's been submitted. It's just for zoning, identifying the zoning parameters. So it's normal that the final approved site plan always has some minor non-zoning, adjustments, maybe tree hoarding or a slight swale added here or there. So that's kind of normal. So I would, I think the normal development engineering approval process is sufficient to provide assurance that, these things are going to get done according to the required town standards.
Okay, that's fine. I was just trying to take away the potential of interpretation of what's general accordance down the road, but that's fine.
Fair enough.
Committee members, any questions for the applicant? Mr. Dickey.
Just to clarify, if we were to make a motion to approve, are we addressing the garage situation, the size of the garage? Do we want to change that variant? And then, again, on the same subject, we're just, if we were to make a motion to approve, we're just going with the normal wording on the site plan dated, whatever. We don't need to add anything else about this site plan that may deal with drainage once the engineering department approves it, or I'm just asking everybody, really.
So the applicant has formally amended variance number 2 for
Oh, okay.
for the private garage to be 52 square meters. So the only difference in the motion would be that if it were to motion to approve, the motion would be to approve the application as amended, and that would take care of the change in condition number 2. And with respect to the site plan, that's entirely up to the mover of the motion. The applicants and staff seem satisfied that the site plan approval is not going to impact the site plan. And if it does, so the standard conditions that have been requested be fine if that's your preference. If you wanted to make it subject to the minor site plan, that's an option as well, but neither staff or the applicant feel that's necessary. But that's up to the committee member who makes the motion.
Thank you.
Any other questions? See none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, do we have a delegation on this matter?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have Mr. Don Cox who would like to speak to the application. I'll move him into the meeting. One moment.
Good evening, Mr. Cox. Looks like you're still muted. There we go. Good evening, Mr. Cox.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. I'm a neighbor of the proposed applicant's property, not the neighbor that Mr. Kieran was talking about, though. I'm on the other side, on the westerly side of that property. We have a number of concerns. I guess I don't know if they all apply to the Committee of Adjustment or not. Perhaps you can tell me that as we go through it. Maybe the first one to talk to is the one I put down there last, because that has been a discussion already that Mr. Kieran has had. Could you put up the transparency or the slide that Mr. Kieran had with the revised routing of the stormwater? Is that possible?
I think so.
That's it. Thank you very much. Yes, this one does show the redirection of the water that is coming from the south of that particular lot, but it doesn't reflect the water that is going into that property from our property and our property next to us on the other side of us. That house is being built in essentially equivalent of a swale. You can actually tell by the stated elevation levels that it's quite a bit lower going into the property than it is at the front. And it's been discussed that you're having to review this to address that. My concern is the water that's flowing from my property onto this property will be completely blocked by the house. And I wondered what they were going to, if this was actually being looked at as well. That's one of the concerns we had.
So if you can go through your concerns, I'm sure Mr. Kieran is taking notes, and once you've raised all the issues, we'll give him an opportunity to respond to them.
Okay. We've got a very healthy cedar hedge running along the east side of our property, which is the west side of this property. It's in our runs almost the full length of the property line. Now, the concern here is with respect to the excavation. The excavation will have to be within about 2 feet or so of the property line to accommodate the house, which has a 4-foot setback from the property line. And our concern is for the cedar hedge and whether anything can be done to protect them during this excavation activity. That's one. Another one is we have a spruce that's 24 inches across. That's 5 feet from the property line. And would there be any protection for that during the excavation process? Another concern we have is we've had construction vehicles and materials placed on the road. They've been a problem on this old Lakeshore Road in the past. And there were times when we couldn't get out of our driveway due to congestion. We're asking if the construction vehicles for this particular site and materials could be accommodated right on the property. And since this house is being built farther back than the existing house, there should be enough room for that, we hope. And we have a swimming pool, and we're a little concerned if there's stonework associated with the building of this house, that the dust would create quite a problem, in addition to affecting the air quality. And we request that this would be done with a wet saw. There was some tree signage dated November the 4th, 1924, stating that 3 trees were to be planted to replace the 12 large trees that are being removed. What and where would those new trees be? Or would you even address that at this meeting? So that's that covers what I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cox. So you've raised a number of issues. Some are relevant to the variances, some are relevant to the site plan process the applicant's going through, and I guess others, construction practices, and parking is more bylaw enforcement issue, but we'll ask Mr. Kieran to address all the matters that you've raised.
Sure. Happy to do that. In terms of your first point, which I believe was just about water that's currently flowing across your property and onto the subject property, and kind of having a natural course now, and that the new house will block that. So the grading review and the stormwater management plan that's been produced for this property is quite comprehensive, and it considers not only the property that's being developed, but the whole area, because it looks at water coming from not only your lot, but other lots. So it's not showing in that sketch that I had provided, because it's, again, I'm not really speaking to that on a technical level, because that's not my area of expertise. But what I can tell you is that our consultants, who are the experts, then present that to development engineering staff, who are also experts, and then they basically take all those things into account. Part of the general grading requirements for these type of developments is that we cannot disrupt existing drainage patterns, and we can't we could redirect them, but we can't make them worse for other people. We can take more water on and redirect it, and that's also why we have that dry well, which will absorb a lot of water that's currently just flowing either through the property or into the ditch. So that's one element that's going to certainly help absorb water. So I don't want to get too technical about my commentary there, because it's not my area of expertise, but it's a very comprehensive review done by the appropriate department, which is development engineering, and you can contact them anytime to ask them these questions, and they'll probably have a better answer for you than I do, and a more technical answer. So that's a process that's underway. and you're free to contact them, and I suggest you do that. The tree protection, so I don't have a detailed plan in front of me, but we do have an arborist report and a full tree protection plan in place as well, and that's part of the development engineering approval. So we won't get our permit from them unless all the trees that are being saved are protected. Any neighboring trees are automatically to be protected. We don't even have a choice. And even if your roots are impacted to a certain degree, then we have to seek your permission. So that's all going to be protected. Again, that plan is available for you to review, and you can also contact my office later in the week, and I can share that with you and show you what we have. Happy to do that. The construction traffic and the stone cutting, I mean, that's really for the builder to decide. I know that we are proposing a pretty large material storage area right on the site plan. It's also a requirement of the development engineering process that we provide that space. So that is being provided. I can't say for sure, if there's a truck that's going to be parked in front of your house for a while. That's more a discussion you can have with the builder when they start. And I know this builder personally, so he's good to work with. And the last point was about the replacement trees. So there are replacement trees proposed. That is part of the requirement from development engineering. There's deposit monies that are in place that won't be released until those trees are planted. As far as where they're located, that is a little bit flexible, but they have to be on the property. We have to plant them, and they have to be in accordance with the specified list of allowed trees that the town permits. So I don't think we made the specific selection yet, but it has to be according to one of the approved trees that they allow.
Well, thank you very much. There's one other question we had, and that is, what is the square footage of this house? It doesn't show it on any of the schematics.
Yeah, it's on there, but it's just very small. It's approximately 6,400 square feet.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cox. Mr. Kieran, for your responses. Secretary Treasurer, has anyone else called in to speak to this matter?
No, Mr. Chair, there have been no calls.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to close discussion on the matter and look for a motion on the amended application, and that's the amendment for the garage to go from 84 square meters to 52 square meters. Mr. Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Based on my review of the owner's application, site plans, the building elevation, my site visit, together with the presentation by the owner's consultant and the planning staff's report, and having regard to the discussion neighbor and previous letters from the neighbor on the other side, I'm satisfied that the variances as amended are minor in nature and conform to the 4 tests of the Planning Act. We put forward a motion that the application has been applied for be approved, subject to the condition that the dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the site plan and elevations dated November 18th, 2024, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if the building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Thank you, Mr. Dickey. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor of the motion to approve? That is unanimous. Your application has been approved.
Great. Thank you so much. Have a good night, everyone.
DAV 014 2025 at 244 Sable Street. If anyone wishes to speak to this application, you can call 905-815-6095. Good evening, sir. Still muted. There we go. Good evening.
Chair, how are you?
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Colin Judd. I'm representing the homeowner. I'm from Keller Engineering. I'm a technologist. And the address on record tonight is the 244 Sable Street. And essentially, the homeowner wanted to join tonight, so he might be viewing us here. And so essentially, we are asking for an increase in the maximum residential floor area ratio from 41 to 45.25%. And next slide, please. Okay, so we noticed some comparable properties within the area, and the two that were most prevalent is similar to the subject property would be from 2378 Rebecca and 415 Third Line. And the RFAs that were approved previously were 45.9% and 45.1% for the RFA. Below, you can just see that the homeowners provide me with an image of a new, fairly new dwelling, two-story dwelling just up the road on 265 Sable. And just to note that it does feature a fairly high mansard roof and some front features such as the sheet metal roofing and the dark windows and a bit of a front porch, covered porch area. So you can see that in a modern stone veneer and low mansard. Next slide, please. Okay. All right. Just to speak to the map at the top there, this is the 3D maps for Oakville. And you can see that Sable Street is midway between Hickson and Rebecca to the north. And it's on the west side. And essentially the neighboring properties of 238 and 232 are presently two-story dwellings as well that are a combination of stone veneer and stucco. And there's also the property that I spoke to in the previous slide, 265 Sable, up at the top there. It's fairly recent built. So in the image below here, you can see just that it does consist of a front stone veneer approach to the front of the property. There's covered porch elements as well. And this is kind of partially the idea that we're trying to follow as well. So just to speak to the neighborhood, this is, we consider it in a neighborhood in transition. It's a mixture of 1950s and 60s finished single-story bungalows with now new emerging two-story dwellings. And let's see here. And the subject property does not fall within any of the Parkway Belts or Greenbelt sensitive lands. The next slide, please. Okay, the existing dwelling, as you can see, is the footprint is 124.49 square meters. It's currently a single-story brick and brick dwelling, and to the left is a two-story stucco with a stone veneer front, and the building to the right is a one-story brick bungalow. Next slide, please. So the proposed dwelling is going to be a two-story stone and stucco single-family dwelling with a lot coverage of 248.42 square meters, and that falls within the 35% maximum. Next slide, please. So just to reiterate the zoning compliance, to date, we've complied with all the other deficiencies that were noted to this point, except for the maximum RFA. So we're okay with the setbacks in the front and back in the building height. Next slide, please. Okay, so just to reiterate the design inspiration for this building, this one can be seen near Rebecca and Sable Street, and it has quite a number of the similar features as proposed in this design. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's the front elevation. And as you can see, there's the mansard roof, asphalt shingle, also with the two-ply mod roof. It also has slight projections for the dormers and curved fascia to accent it. The front is mainly all stone veneer with a little bit of stucco accents. We've also accentuated the front design a little bit by the bay window areas with the sheet metal roof accents and the stucco surrounds. and also that we're going to be looking at a wood-clad steel front door and garage doors. And next slide, please. Okay, so rear elevation, you can see that the bay windows are also carrying to the back of the house as well. I'm trying to maintain some of that projection from the front. And this will be a covered porch area consisting of a 2-ply mod bit low slope roof, mainly in stucco and stucco columns. It also consists of a basement walkout. And you can see that the height of the house is kind of separated a little bit between the stone veneer and stucco finish above on the second. And the windows will contain a set of fiberglass window frames with upper transoms. And of course, again, the mansard roof and the low slope wide bit roof. Next slide, please. Okay, you can see that carries through to the left and right elevations as well. Combination of the stucco and stone veneer finishes, fiberglass window frames. I can see a bit of the roof deck cover, and also you can see a bit of the side slope of the side projection of the covered porch and the sheet metal accents. And again on the right. Okay, the next slide, please. Okay, the proposed main floor plan, the net floor area is 162.62, and that excludes the garage from the calculation. And that's mainly housing the dining room and office, bathroom and kitchen, and a great room. And next slide, please. Okay, the second floor plan is net floor area of 161.29, and this excludes the open area to above in the great room and in the front foyer area, which are also excluded from the calculation. And this is consists of a 4-bedroom space. The homeowner does have to have a larger family that needs to accommodate. So this is for the reason for the additional area. Next slide, please. Okay, and I've just included the basement floor plan, but I know that's not really too much part of the variance I applied for here. Next slide, please. Okay, so in summary, we believe that this is a neighborhood that's already well into transition based on the 3D mapping. Several of the home examples share similar architectural styles. The massing and style to the subject property's proposed design. So those are items such as 2-story, the mansard roof, stone veneer, the covered front porch, bay windows, the roof accents, curved dormers. We're seeing this a little bit more in the area. So from a future for urban planning perspective, given the demand for livable space is at a high, we feel that maximizing the square footage is optimal for this development and for growing population and provide for more family members or even alternative space opportunities. We believe that it's reasonable that it falls into its evolving surroundings. Next slide, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you like to speak to the fact that staff are not in support of this application?
This was a recent development that we understand that there are some architectural elements or accents that they were not in favor of. The homeowner has advised me that he is willing to entertain some changes in some of the architectural style to break up some of the vertical massing, and we'll be able to provide some alternatives or listen to other suggestions to reduce that to accommodate blending in the surrounding area.
The time to do that is before you're at the committee, and there was an opportunity if you wanted to seek a deferral to make changes at the beginning of the meeting.
I see.
At that point, you either get approved as is or denied. There's not really an opportunity to make changes. That those discussions should have happened with planning staff prior to this coming tonight, if that's the intent of the owner.
Well, these were provided towards the end of last week, so we needed to discuss and consult with the client to be able to amend any of those or address any of those alternative options to something that may be a little more acceptable to the committee.
Yeah, I think I can't speak for staff, but I think if your dwelling, looked like the one you put on that you said your client took their inspiration from with the drop second floor roof, to mitigate the impact of the massing, there may have been a different response from staff and potentially a different response from this committee.
Okay, are there any other?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. If my name's Brian O'Hara, I'm a planner with the town of Oakville. Mr. G, I was one who reviewed the application, prepared the staff comments. If your client is willing to meet with myself and our urban design team, who also provided input for this particular application, I would be amenable to a deferral request, even though it's a later stage in the game. If you were so willing to put forward that request, there's also an associated fee with the deferral, but after that point, you can meet with myself and other staff at the town to go over your application and fine tune the design so that you can come back to committee with a positive staff report. Again, Mr. Chair, I'm in your hands if that's something that you're also willing to entertain at this point. But just wanted to throw my input out there.
Thank you for that, Mr. O'Hare. It's normally something we don't like to do once we've had a presentation, but I think considering that neither yourself or your client are regular attendees to the Oakville Committee of Adjustment and they understand the process the way someone like Mr. Kieran, who's here 4 times in one night, does. If you wanted to request a deferral to go meet with staff and potentially make some amendments to your plan, I'd be willing to allow you to make that request at this point, but that has to come from you. If not, it will proceed to a decision tonight, good or bad.
Okay, I would very much like to entertain that deferral and be able to meet with the staff to make the amendments. Yes,
I think that's probably a wise decision.
I think so. Thank you.
Members, are you in favor of deferring this application? Okay, that is unanimous. So the application is deferred. Contact Mr. O'Hare, and once you've had your discussions, if you're willing to make changes, then you'll contact Secretary Treasurer when you're ready to come back to get rescheduled.
Good, wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that.
Then move on to CAV 015 2025 at 263 Sunray Road.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hi, Sylvia Edlabas. I'm from Just Drafting Limited, 216 Medland Street, Toronto, M6P 2N7. I'm here representing my clients at 263 Sunray. Basically, it's a very simple application. My clients want to build above an existing one-story portion of their house. In doing so, we ended up hitting a couple of minor variances that were required on existing points. On the easterly side, we need a minor variance for the side yard setback. That side yard setback is currently existing, and we're not building on that side. The residential floor area is being increased a minimal amount. At some point, someone created storage space in the garage, eliminated the garage. So this is now being added on to my residential floor area. And the clients are also hoping to improve the facade of the current house. So we're extending the front deck across to the corner. And at that outermost corner, I'm creating another problem with front yard setback. But I think the planning department is in support of the application. If there's any questions, I'm here.
Thank you. Just again, remind anybody that wanted to speak to this application, if you can call 905-815-6095. Committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant? I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called in to speak to this application?
No, Mr. Chair, there have been no calls.
Okay, and we'll close the discussion and I'll look for a motion. Ms. Price.
Based on the site visit of the subject property and the reviewing building and elevation plans, the town I recommend that the three variances be minor in nature. The general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw has been maintained. The general intent and purpose of the official plan has been maintained, and the variance is desirable for the appropriate use of land, building, and structure, and is appropriate for the neighborhood. The applicant can proceed with their development subject to the following conditions: that the second story addition and porch additions to the existing detached dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated October 1st, 2024, and that the approval expire is 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on that motion to approve? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, that is unanimous. Your application has been approved.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Moving on to our final application, CAV 025-2025 at 528 Weir Avenue. See Mr. Rafiq. Good evening.
Hello?
Good evening. You just get your name and address, please, and you can proceed with your presentation. You're muted. That looks good now. Rafiq, can you hear us?
Okay, I don't know if you're hearing me. I'm sorting
We
out
can
the
hear you
issue
now.
with my speaker right now.
Okay,
For
we
some
can hear you
reason,
now.
I hear nothing.
Can hear you. You can't hear us. Madam Secretary, is he able to call in to do the presentation if his computer's not working right?
Sure. Yes, Mr. Chair, if you'd like. Yep.
So just the 905-815-6095 number?
Yes, that's correct.
Mr. Rafiq, if you can call that number, 905-815-6095. You can hear me, I think you can, then we should be able to get you hooked up. Just take a break and see if you can get through.
Hey, hello?
Can you hear us now?
Thanks.
Chair, I'm not sure if he's able to hear us.
Like his phone is on mute. Mr. Rafiq, can you hear us?
Hello?
Can you hear us now? And the secretary, it shows that he's muted on the phone line.
I wonder if we might be able to, if there's a chat, maybe we don't have a chat access. I wonder if someone is able to call him.
Okay. I'm gonna call into the number here. Just dialing in right now.
Thank you for calling the town of Oakville. All agents are currently serving other callers. Please continue to hold.
I wonder, it would appear that he can't hear us. And it might be easier if maybe the secretary might be able to call him.
Mr. Chair, it looks like he's online now, but he's muted. We're trying to get in touch with him as well.
Rafiq, can you hear us now? Raise your hand if you can. Showing that.
Okay, I hear your voice now.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, I apologize for this. I really apologize for this.
Not a problem.
And thank you for making this work. Okay, should I start with the presentation?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll keep it brief. We have one. We are requesting a single variance which is related to the size of the home. It's a maximum residential floor area, which we are increasing from 41% to 43.87. We're looking to receive relief of this bylaw regulation, and our justification for this is that we are trying our best to break up the massing of the home. If you go to an earlier page and look at the floor plan of the home, you'll see that the garage portion of this house is pushed back significantly, and which breaks up the massing from the street. Also, we ensured that there's further dynamic and breakups in the main house portion, and we also ensured that we do not exceed in width. The setback regulations on the left and right side are met. We make sure that we do not exceed in lot coverage and in height. So we really put an effort in making sure that this variance is the only one when it comes to the height, when it comes to zoning bylaws that pertain towards the height. And we hope to receive, we also believe that this is in line with the evolving character of the neighborhood. Obviously, a lot of the houses in the area are being torn down, new custom homes are being proposed, none of which much deviate from the one that we have here. There's many examples of houses similar to the variance that we're asking for, some that are slightly above, and we hope that we receive positive feedback from you guys today, similar to the city staff who recommended approval of this. And if there's any further questions, I'm happy to answer them at this point.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, any questions for the applicant? Okay, I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called in to speak to this matter?
No, Mr. Chair, no calls.
Okay, thank you. We'll close the discussion and I'll look for a motion. Mr. Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Based on my review of the owner's application, site plan, building elevations, my site visit, together with the presentation by the owner's consultant and the planning staff's report, I am satisfied that the variance is minor in nature and conforms to the 4 tests under the Planning Act. And I put forth a motion that the application as applied for be approved, subject to the conditions that the dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site grading and servicing plan included in the minor variance application submitted in the elevations dated October 25th, 2023, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if the building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Thank you, Mr. Dickey. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve? That is unanimous. Your application has been approved, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry for the complication.
Not a problem. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Okay, that concludes the applications. We need to confirm minutes from January 22nd. Mr. Dickey, thank you. And a motion to adjourn. Mr. Dickey, Mr. Hardcastle's not here to do it.
Taking over his job.
We are adjourned at 8:36.